we go. So yeah, thank you everybody for coming. I'm really pretty thrilled to be home and have the opportunity to do this. It's great to be back in this building. When I was working for the Dalhousie News back in the early 80s, I used to come here and cover trials, and so I have a lot of memories from this place. And yesterday Bill took Michael and myself and showed us around the jail, and I had never been to the jail before, and he showed us where the gallows had been for that infamous murder in 1957. And I was telling Bill that my dad was actually a witness to that. And I don't remember Dad talking about it, but I remember Mom saying that Dad had been quite upset that he had been called to do this, but he felt it was his civic duty. So there's certainly a lot of history in this building. And I'm really happy to have Michael Levesque here. He's going to add a visual component to this. Michael and I met in grade 1. He was one of my first friends at the convent school, and I have a fond memory of being accosted by the schoolyard bully who was about to lay a beating on me, and Mike stepped in and told him to get lost, and he did. So thank you, Mike.
We haven't found him since.
No. And I'm going to be reading a lot of poems about Dalhousie, about growing up here, my memories. And one of my fond memories is Mike and I, after grade 1, we spent the summer muskrat trapping. And there was a little creek behind his house. And we would go out there and we would make these little contraptions from sticks and stones and try to trap muskrats. And of course, we never trapped a muskrat. We never saw a muskrat. But we had a lot of fun that summer, and towards the end of the summer, it was almost time to start school. I was walking home, and there on the road was this big fat muskrat, and I swear to God it could have been a hippo, and I wouldn't have been more excited. So that's a good memory. So yeah, I'm going to read a number of poems about home, and then at the end I'm going to just read some general poems. This one is from my current audiobook called Prayer to Morning, and it's called The Poet's Advice to His Younger Self. And I think when you reach a certain age, we all, at one time or another, have found ourselves saying, oh, if I had known then what I know now. And so this is the message that I would send to the 10-year-old version of myself if I could. The poet's advice to his younger self. Go forth into that morning and ride towards the sun, and climb your 100 apple trees before the day is done. And never count the seconds or the paths your heart will trace, and savor each sweet moment that the sun shines on your face. And when the tide is out, breathe deeply, you are free. Assume the siren soul of the wild and restless sea. And never waste a morning spent idle in your heart, for the orbit of the planet seems much slower at the start. But the days of endless summer and the everlasting nights are but a cruel illusion obscured by childhood's rites. And when your heart awakens and love comes to the fore, never leave those feelings stand outside the timid door. For the apple you leave hanging while you make your bashful plans will drop before the sun into another boy's keen hands. Beyond the squandered afternoon, when night drops like a stone, but one word written in your heart, and that word is alone. And if you'd see a sunrise that brings you peace of mind, above all things, avoid the sting of acts that are unkind. For unkindness is a verdict for each petty schoolyard crime, and regret is but an echo that does not fade with time. So ride into that morning Go careless, swift and free, and assume the siren soul of the morning's restless sea. And never leave a rosy apple hanging on the bough. Love as if the only moment left is here and now. And for each fallen sparrow who sports a broken wing, let kindness be the only song the day will hear you sing. So seize the day and love the way you'd have love come to you. May your kindness be as boundless as the ocean's deepest blue. Thank you. Thank you. Take me back across November's cold, imposing skies, a moment of such purity, the chocolate waves of Restigouche lapping at my skin like a warm, friendly mongrel, beneath the holy skies of August's fleeting dog days. The dome of my cathedral, the color of the Queen of Heaven's tunic in a dream of Raphael's. Slowly I submerge in the likeness of a small act man calls death, and surface in the yellow light of distant afternoon in the likeness of the resurrection, to walk upon those consecrated waters in the newness of life, which is the timeless prayer of boyhood, never uttered by the tongue, but by a drumming heart, the song of songs of youth, for love is more delightful than wine. The gentle breath of God, like a feather on my skin, did raise those beating droplets on my arms and legs and chest unto the heavens, taken by the sun, to a place of greater sanctity than even here, while I search, inviolable, among the swaying eelgrass, those iridescent rushes, for a hidden basket cradled on the ripples, reflecting all the glory of the day in shimmering perfection, this lullaby of youth's unbridled river flowing through my soul. Thank you. There was lots to love about being a kid here, and I'm sure Mike will attest that one of the really wonderful things about the summers were those days that we spent at Charlotte Falls. And I look back on those days as some of the best days of my life. And it's a wonder that we survived it, given the acrobatics that we performed off the cliffs. But this is called "Oh, Where Are the Boys of Summer?" and it harkens back to those days. Oh, where are the boys of summer, skirting midnight garden walls, or standing high against the sky above the Charlotte Falls? And where are the boys of autumn on those evenings rare and cool, hurling stones of ardor high above the darkened school? And where are the boys of winter in that shack upon the ice, pulling smelts up from the darkness in that hidden paradise? Where are the boys of springtime dreaming boyhood dreams of May, or courting death upon the ice floes in the semi-frozen bay? On a leaning cliff I perched, heard the waterfall's soft crash, exhaled forbidden incense, the afternoon's sweet hash. My skin drawn tight, o'er bones as light as bullets in a gun, I knew on high that I could fly into that squinting sun. Too shy my leap towards the deep would feed the hungry rocks and shatter my illusion where Atropos fairly mocks. And if too far I set the bar when vaulting from that stone, into the breaking shadows I'd commit my flesh and bone. I felt my heart aflutter as I stepped into the sky, but not with apprehension. I was not afraid to die. It fluttered for the moment when I traded earth for heaven and leapt towards the falling sun, my soul now fully leavened. As my weightless body and the river fell as one, the falls and I converged where the young and fearless run. It pushed me to the bottom where the eel and rainbow rest, a baptism of thunder and thunder in my chest. Curled like a tumbleweed and one now with the flow, no care could ever find me in that weightless world below. Now as days fill up my soul and make the morning sigh, I still recall a moment lost between the earth and sky. And when I find a rocky perch or cascade far below, I will not hesitate to leap where prudent men won't go. For all the great tomorrows I might face before I die, I'll risk them for a moment lost between the earth and sky. Oh, where the boys of summer skirting midnight garden walls, or standing high against the sky above the Charlotte Falls. Thank you very much. One of the great things about being a kid is all of the crushes and little loves that we have, and I usually had half a dozen or so on the go, and most of them came to naught. But it's fun to think back to all those times. And one day I was at home where I live in PEI now, and I saw these kids getting off a bus, and I saw the way they skipped through the dust, and the dust was coming up, and they were reveling in it, and it brought me back to those times. So I call this the crown. Anxiously they spill out of the black and yellow bus and sing their merry way down this drab and lifeless road. The sun shines just as brightly here for me, but I am tired, and I have felt its warming rays infusing me at winter's end at least 1,000 times. For I tumbled down a different road so very long ago and heralded the spring like the robin in my apple tree. Was ever there a one who wore my hopeful April with such unrepentant pride, or lavished her with cheer so sweet and timeless? As he punctuates the silence with his brief psalms of perfection, even God refrains from attempting to improve his burst of song. No, none could ever sing like he, nor those small boys, for no one takes the sunshine straight without a chaser, in such ease or willing reverence as they. No one inhales the thawing earth so keenly, nor appreciates the rising dust beneath their feet as though a prayer. Spring was made in heaven, most assuredly, for faithful such as these. And in my time I loved it too, before I knew what love was. And sunshine, like a drug, pried open my eyes and youthful mind for the very first time, and the newness of its radiance was a marvel unto my soul. For everything about me then was love, despite so many postures, uncertainties, and fears. I was as anxious for the day as it was for itself, fearful of the dark and the stark revelation that nothing could be done to stop the falling sun from plunging to the sea at end of day. But still the jeweled crown I sought was love, and though I cherished each and every dawning, each still mysterious pond, and every frozen puddle that clanked beneath my feet like broken dinner plates, I was, above it all, a boy in love with love, a girl in tartan dress with small Catholic hands, hands warm and soft, hands I never held. 50 years and still I can recall the sweetness of her voice, the manner of her speech, like an echo from that most pleasant of pastures when we were still just lambs in spring, before our confirmations, when innocence was pure as the blush upon her cheeks. And even now I smile for her, the brilliant gem she was, bathed in the yellow lather of our rolling guardian angel, lilting in the heavens against the hard blue morning. She was, I know, the reason that the April sun did shine so very brightly. And 6 eternal boyful years, my aching heart skipped beats for her, a smooth and well-worn stone across the cool, dark pond of time. 6 boyful years I dreamed that I might hold that perfect hand. And though I never did, yet still it was a dream worthy of the dreaming. For that lamb in April's vast and pleasant meadows, what warmth I did imagine to feel it clasp my own, when brisk the cold east wind did dress us in our jackets and bid us find the sunny glebes neath the eye of God and leave the hollow shadows for something called tomorrow. And though I lost the melody for my own ode to spring upon a road like this so very long ago, still sometimes I find him, that effusive little boy, searching for his crown in the fierce sun of April, when his most attentive pupils are shrunken fast before its great unyielding kindness. For today's bright days and yesterday's are one and are the same, and the boy I knew is buried, but not beneath the ground. No, he is buried in my breast, beneath an avalanche of days. Thank you. I couldn't very well do a presentation about home without at least one poem on the mill. And those of you who are old enough to remember the good old days might remember that the mill completely filled our senses. We could hear it, we could see it, we could smell it, and some days we could even taste it. Taste the sulfur in the back of your mouth. And I call this Milltown 1972. The taste of sulfur settles on my palate like a sediment each time I exhale through my nose. Tortured pulp trucks groan against the grade on the hill, edging on abandon, holding back their loads against the unrelenting pull of gravity, which never tires nor rests on the side of this small mountain. And all was day and night, the white noise of the mill, a dull grinding hum, punctuated freely by bangs and hollow knocks, and vague metallic clinking, like nails gently shaken in a dry paper bag. And as the sun surrenders to the will of the horizon, that Appalachian cradle on the waves, its straining rays will turn to honey once again, that dirty brown pulp mountain, a million pieces strong, a forest laid to waste, bathed in yellow light. Across the bay, the blood-red banks of ragged old Gaspé bleed into the river, churning pastel blue and frothing at the mouth. And I am in a Mackinaw that cannot cut the wind, can't even slow it down. It blows right through this ghost, this boy upon the hill, with all my senses firing above the windswept Milltown in 1972. Thank you. And it's a beautiful thing to be a child, and although it's fraught with all kinds of perils, it's a beautiful thing to be an adolescent. But there's this period in between that lasts about 5 minutes when you go from being a little boy to at least trying to be a man. It kind of happens overnight. And there are all kinds of rituals that go with that, and that's what this poem is about. It's about a night many years ago when me and my buddies were going to a sock hop at the St. John Bosco School, a church. They used to have little dances in the basement there. And we stopped behind the water tank on Gray Street. And my mother had a little plastic flask from Lourdes that at one time had holy water in it. And this night it had rum in it. And so anyway, we were back there. It was a beautiful spring night. The way I remember it, the sky was purple, beautiful stars twinkling. and we little boys trying to be men. So that's what this poem is about. A purple sky behind Dalhousie Mountain, the water tank on Grey Street framed by the woods and volcanic rock, the sheer cliff that trapped me as a child, its crown an adolescent paradise and testing ground we call Blueberry Hill, high above the town, high above the dark church, that much closer to heaven and threatening hell. Behind the tank, our breaths hung heavy in the darkness, small clouds lingering in the seraphic night, the cold scent of snow passing right through us, springtime's first whiff of earth and pavement, the sweet bouquet of April's gorging moon. Darkness that tingled in the night sky, tiny suns that danced like pinholes in an amethyst blanket, covering the blazing face of God, phosphorus in a tabernacle, shot full of martyrs' arrows and leaking light like Saint Sebastian. In my pocket, 3 bent cigarettes. Under my belt, a plastic flask that once carried holy water from the consecrated source at Lourdes, now filled with stolen rum, spirits no less holy in our puerile pagan hands. We took our sacraments to spring, to the boys we were deserting, to what we might become. We passed the plastic chalice and purified ourselves with tobacco for the girls who might detect our smudging and sense the angel's share upon our breath and think us less the virgins we most surely were, 13, 14, full of lies and aching for the truth. It was our holy of holies, glory not of heaven, but of the daring night, chaste, immaculate, at once brave and fearful, on the edge of the profane, bursting with anticipation, seeing every snowflake, each celestial asterisk, with the squinting eye of a newborn, the embrace of warmth from the chill of night, and the exuberance of waking to a late September's azure morning. It was the eventide on which we were delivered from the birth canal of childhood to the brilliant, urgent night, a holy day between 2 solitudes when the racing wind did not possess the wisdom or the reverence to mourn the lands we left behind, in shadow, gone forever, like the receding echo of an autumn schoolyard song. Thank you. And as much as I love the town and the people here, I love the geography. I lived in the Rocky Mountains. I've traveled all over the world, and I've seen very few places that I would say are more beautiful than the Restigouche River and the Bay Chaleur. And I was here for the month of August with my brother Pete and Brenda 2 years ago. Spent the whole month, and I would often go with my son Noah down to Stewart's Beach, and we'd look for fossils, and we'd go to the old bottle dump, and we'd build little fires and just enjoy the beauty of it. And I wrote this poem down there one day, and I call it The Burning Bush. I could spend 1,000 summers 'neath the sun upon this shore, where these flat stones warm my bones and draw out all the pain from my body and my soul, like a poultice made of kelp and driftwood, sweet myrrh of Restigouche. This little fire consumes me in spirit, but not flesh. My burning bush whispers like the waves in the wind, and cackles when I think that I might comprehend the beauty of this place, the lost labor of ages that brought it to my eyes. 500 million summers these cliffs have watched the sea, from when the world was pure, before a single thought had ever crossed a single mind, when only God was privy to the flame of this season. The sun pours down like empathy upon my weary heart. This half-moon shore, it cradles my affection like a lover in my time of greatest need. My little fire, a chick still in the nest, singing for his food, and how I love to nurture him with birch bark and driftwood. For everything this day is burning on my shore, and I could warm my soul forever here without a single want, and free, oh free of care, beneath blue August skies in Restigouche in summer on these timeless afternoons. Thank you. And of course, spring was a big deal when we lived here, when we were kids. It was a very exciting time, and that's what this little poem is about. I call it Cresting. When Restigouche was resting 'neath its blanket in the spring, and the cricket and cicada were nowhere to be found, our boyful hearts were cresting for to hear the grackles sing, with April's sun arresting growing patches of wet ground. Ice along the shore, the temptations of the deep, forbidden foolish pleasures in the steely cold blue bay. Swagger to the fore, from flow to flow we'd leap, no second hand to measure that treasured time at play. Icy breeze and burning sun, temptations of the flesh, when first our skin availed itself to bleeding bright blue skies. Budding trees, water run, fulfillment of each wish, when April's waking hearts prevailed, feeding slight new sighs. Spring was never ending, and innocent the day, with summer always on the cusp, and winter in retreat, and duty only pending on my playful April bay, and hearts would quickly mend when summer would entreat. Thank you. Thank you very much. I have another poem here about home, and when I was a kid, there were two things that I really wanted to do. One was travel the world, and when I was a kid, I put a backpack on, and I was gone for years. I slept rough, and I backpacked, and I was all over the place. But as much as I wanted to do that, I wanted to be here. And so I was kind of conflicted, and I would often come home. And I remember one summer I was in Jasper, Alberta, and I had about $25 in my pocket. And I thought, man, I just got to get home and see my dog. So I hitchhiked 3,500 miles to come home and spend a little time with my dog and my family. And that's what life was like in those days. You would just leave, cross the country on a moment's notice and never give it a second thought. And so I call this, I Did Not Leave You Easily. I did not run away, for I love the snowy hills of Blue Gaspé and the warming hearth that was my father's table, the steady hand that was my mother's love. The sweet smell of rotting leaves and salted driftwood burning on the beach, a million tiny pinholes leaking through the canvas of the night, royal purple curtains hoisted on the dawn by the counterweight of morning, too heavy to repress, too scalding hot to hold, too filled with joy to suffer the darkness any longer. It rolled out all its diamonds on the bay. It rolled out all its diamonds like marbles on the bay, a bowling ball of fire cutting through Chaleur, leaving blinding sparkles dancing on the ripples as they turn from black to mercury and then to precious blue. And only me to witness it, for all the town is sleeping, and I am drunk with youth, with loneliness and exaltation, black hash and tequila. I survive another summer with a hardened heart and soft hands, and hope that never fades, brief, awkward encounters on the beach, in a field, behind the church, little islands in a flood stream of unrequited love. And I would race the sun home before my mother made it to the kitchen, full of life to bursting, with all my senses firing. I loved it all, every joyful dawn, every solitary evening, every boyful triumph in every broken heart. The glory of the blood racing from my core to my cold and hungry hands, to the blush upon my cheeks, to the song of songs that I was born to sing. For I was made for running, not to hesitate or falter. I was born to chase, but not to follow, to dream dreams and see visions, not to be instructed or informed, to taste the salt of my own blood and give my heart and soul to leaving with the tide and following the seasons. For I was Beaujolais, set in an ancient bottle, and I could no more hold myself than you, the breaking dawn. Nor would I deny nor check my own naive dreaming, for innocence is everything that symmetry would be if it only had the courage. And what are we if we do not become the pathway to our dreams? For the pathway is the dreaming, and the journey then the destination. And I, in every broken dawn I witnessed from the shore, every hardwood floor I slept upon, every heart I chased across the fields without a saddle or a bridle, I was right. And yes, I loved it all, and still I love it all, though faded now to yellow in the pictures in my dreams. No, I did not run away. I ran toward you in the morning, and in the darkest night. I did not leave you easily or lightly, and yet I never will. For what are we if we do not become the pathway to our dreams? Thank you. I remember back in the day, some mornings were easier than others, and I call this one Jacket River Morning. Morning fell like an anvil, cold, wet, hard, and gray. I staggered from the evening's din, walked across that unfamiliar field toward the unsubdued monochrome bay. Wind and waves in short ashen bursts, like words uttered in contempt. The evening's rosy glow of hash and wine, a fading ember smothered by sobriety. Alone, awake, cold and wet, my young heart ached for one small moment, one kind soft hand to warm my own, a modest alibi to slip my jacket off against the hostile August dawn, and in adolescent chivalry share that well-loved denim and change that lonely moment on that bleak, uncherished shore forever. Thank you. Thank you very much. One of the things I've done over the years, recent years, is I've been writing songs again. I don't play music anymore, but I do. I collaborate with songwriters from around the world, and I've been writing with people from Australia and Africa and all over Europe, Nashville, across Canada. And this next poem was written in the format of a song, and it's currently in the hands of a young singer-songwriter from England who's a real rising star. His name is Blair Dunlop. And this is also on my current audiobook, Prayer for Morning. And by the way, I will have some swag here later if anybody is interested in buying some of this stuff. I call this the Pale-Eyed Minstrel Boy. He was born thirsty for the early morning sky, inhaled the sun like orange juice, and drank the bright dawn dry. He woke the sleeping swallow with his laughter and his tears, while the world slept around him in his younger, wilder years. His pale blue eyes were question marks, his heart was on his sleeve, and a dirge was on his lips when the full moon was bereaved. Hidden in his breast, in a place he dare not name, a shattered heart kept time for the love that never came? And who in spring's bright morning, while the sun is in his way, thinks to count the hours while the lilacs bloom in May? And who, when they are parting in summer's youthful rain, ever has a notion they might never meet again? I knew him in the night when the drunken moon did call, and in the squinting morning when contrition's tears did fall. And all the locals knew him too, his thumb out on the road, reflecting homeward lights like the ghost of Tom Joad. Now April is a-comin', ice is breaking on the shore, but that pale-eyed minstrel boy don't come around here anymore. The last time that I saw him, he was running for a train. Only time he had the sense to come in from the rain. And who in spring's bright morning, when the sun is in his way, thinks to count the hours while the lilacs bloom in May? And who, when they are parting in summer's youthful rain, ever has the notion they might never meet again? Sometimes I miss that minstrel boy who drank the bright dawn dry. I guess I never thought he'd leave when I was young and high. I miss his easy laughter, and I miss his easy tears. I miss his easy love in his younger, wilder years. Just once I caught a glimpse of him. It took him by surprise. I could see the years written on those pale blue eyes. For there he stood before me like a man out on parole. He was looking in the mirror and searching for his soul. And who in spring's bright morning, while the sun is in his way, thinks to count the hours while the lilacs bloom in May? And who, when they are parting in summer's youthful rain, ever has the notion they might never meet again? Thank you. I have one poem here. I would say it's a difficult poem. And as I've said a number of times, this was a wonderful place to grow up. But like any community, it had its dark corners, and we had our dark corners here. And the issue that I'm going to read about affected dozens of my friends when I was a child, and in particular my brother Mike. And it's for those people that I keep this alive. I don't know that we need to dwell on the past, but if we want past injustices not to repeat themselves, I don't think we can afford to forget them. So I call this a heavy millstone. We gathered, we the faithful, when summoned by that bell. The small, the weak, the innocent, drawn to its knell. 3 hours hid the sun when that vulgar show began. The rapist with the Eucharist upon his filthy hands. Hands that tore the fleece from the smallest faithful lamb. And hands that left the soul defiled and primed it to be damned. And when his rape had finished and Mass had then begun, he placed the holy host upon the slaughtered lamb's young tongue. 100 faithful in their pews knew well the Father's sin, yet offered up those trusting doves, their precious, helpless kin. Men who to a burning house, to save the child within, would rush without a thought, allowed that sacrificial sin. And women, selfless shepherds, who were turned back from the inn, sat silent and obedient while the faithful flock was thinned. And in that great cathedral, built to glorify his God, the bishop killed the lamb when he spared the priest his rod. And for every priest and layman who hid the vulgar truth, may there be a heavy millstone to justify lost youth. Thank you. Thank you for listening. I have one more Dalhousie poem. It's a look back on the rosy days of youth, but it's also a reckoning. It's also a reckoning with how quickly life goes by. I see some of my old friends here from when I was a kid, and I'm sure they have the same feelings that I do. You wake up and you think, where did 40 years go? And so that's what this is about. It's called The Long, Long, Long Ago, and it's from Prayer to Morning. From Christmas to my birthday was a long, long row to hoe, when mornings were eternal in the long, long, long ago. And June until September past my window slowly wend, for I can still remember summer days that had no end. A lifetime in each morning, each afternoon and age, and sunshine tightly tethered to each daybreak's bright front page. Along the creeks and beaches I searched for hidden treasure, but overlooked that polished gem, the day too long to measure. And I too young to savor, when time was not our master, a lifetime's greatest glory, those mornings in my pasture. When August was the dream on those dog day afternoons, beneath the pure white wisps so eloquently strewn. From my birthday until Christmas was a long, long row to hoe, eternal rosy school days in the long, long, long ago. In rubber boots and blue jeans I'd take to April's streets, where Joyce in white and tartan made my young heart skip a beat. September and October fill the purple nights with chill, while November's mediocre stab at winter was a thrill. To break the brittle surface of each newly frozen pond would wake the little furnace neath the hand knit I had on. But now the sun is fleeting, how it races across the sky, and I the one repeating how quick the seasons fly. While every schoolyard cry still a prayer unto the morning, and each sun rising high, the face of God adorning. And I, a child of years now, on this long, long row to hoe, but once I knew forever, in the long, long, long ago. Thank you. And so now I'm going to read a poem from my first audiobook, which was called A Blossom to Job. 28 years ago, I had the most remarkable dream. And it's something I've carried with me all these years, and even now it's a comfort. I call this Who But Daniel. I saw him in a dream so many years ago, laughter beyond measure from that small aortic flow. Even now I cannot help but smile as I recall the way I knew his heart on that rainy night, that fall. My voice was in his laughter, and his joy was in my soul. His love was in my breast, like the bonfire's warming coals. And when I shook the sun and bade him wake the lazy day, still I felt his laughter, and it kept the rain at bay. All day long I wondered who the laughing child could be, for I could not place his eyes, but his soul was known to me. And though he never spoke a word, his message was quite plain, that his heart was full of living, that his joy was unrestrained. And who could solve a dream like this but Daniel in the den? How does a soul know what to choose to show the love within? But that night the rain kept falling, and his laughter left my ears, and it was the darkest evening, watered with the cruelest tears. For the hopeful place that we had set for one as yet to come would be taken from our table before the morning sun. Our tears were like November's darkened days of frozen rain, and the searing air we breathed, splinters pulled against the grain. And when the skies had cleared and the tears had drained away, I thought back to the recent dream I'd had upon that day. A laughing little boy without a single word to say, unbridled in his joy like the leaping trout's ballet. Perhaps he made a shallow dive into the living stream, but still he saw the eddies where the sleeping rainbows dream. Perhaps he saw the sorrow that was coming on the dawn, and perhaps he let me know that the journey was still on. For who would share that dream but my Daniel in the den? And who knows what a soul might choose to show the love within. Thank you. I've always been a fan of the artist Marc Chagall. When I was a little boy, I saw a CBC special about him, and from that time, I've loved what he did. And a couple of years ago, I wrote a book of poems interpreting the paintings of Marc Chagall. And it was just this crazy coincidence that I started writing these poems just before I went to Montreal for 5 weeks. And I found out just before I left for the city that there was a gigantic Chagall exhibit at the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts, over 350 pieces, including probably about 200 canvases. So I spent 5 weeks there, and my work is portable, so I was staying in my daughter's apartment while she was gone to Europe, and I would work through the day, and then in the late afternoon I'd go to the gallery, and I'd walk around, and I'd choose a canvas, and I would write a poem about it. And I remember the first time I walked in the gallery, I was so excited to see it, and as I entered, the lights were muted, and they had Jewish klezmer music playing. And I walked in, and I saw all these canvases, and I just started to weep. And I kind of walked around in a daze for about 20 minutes with tears streaming down my face at the sheer beauty of it. They're just absolutely stunning paintings. And it was the most enjoyable thing, certainly, I've ever done as a writer, and one of the most enjoyable things I've ever done in my life. And in fact, I enjoyed it so much that even now I write little notes once in a while to Chagall as kind of prosaic poems. And about a year ago, I guess it was, I was at a beach in PEI where I do a lot of writing, and it was an absolutely stunning day. And I thought, wow, I wonder what Chagall would have done with this day. And so I wrote this little letter to him. I call it Letter from Kinloch on Thirst. Excuse me. Dear Chagall, these tidal flats are anxious, Mark, for one who is endearing, a child as bright as you to lift them to the easel of posterity. My cove is open-armed, like a singer on a stage, before his final bow, ready for those rolling waves of love, beating on the shores of affirmation, up and down the coast of aspiration. For each man has a canvas in his heart, Chagall, but only those so favored by the gods as you may save a day like this with oil and sable, mixed with love and gratitude, that willing hearts like mine might still behold its steady burn through days of rain and cold that seem eternal. And those who turn the seagull's carefree flight to buoyant notes, caressed of wood and string, pluck wonder like a harp from the ether of the firmament, and hold it for all mankind as a prayer offered to artistry and witnessed by the love of God himself. For God did not make souls in the forge of his ambition for labor or for tedium, but as a constant craving for righteousness and beauty. For what is wine, Chagall, no matter what the vintage, no matter it be red as blood or fragrant as a rose, if not for thirst? This is what a soul is for, and God's unyielding gift to man is more than simple beauty. His greatest of all gifts, Chagall, is thirst. For the tree whose roots reach deep into a watery source will never cast an anxious glance unto the blue horizon for a promissory note of cotton tumbleweeds rolling in from heaven like a salve to soothe the cracked hard skin of River Jordan. And they who thirst in winter's bleakest days and yearn for one small ember in the hour of total darkness, when the whereabouts of Saul are yet unknown, turn hopefully to those as you, who fill the world with color and the air with trills and harmonies, to keep the red breast sharp and save the brightest rays of warming sunshine for the darkest days of winter. For such as these are mirrors to reflect back onto God, those places in our hearts, like this, my lonely cove, before the blossoms yet have shown the blush upon their cheeks unto the morning. Always, dear Chagall, whenever I see beauty, taste it in the air, feel it in the burn of salty stream along my cheeks, do I sense the love of God imbued unto my breast, for those who paint their small bouquets, raise their holy voices, and share the tender gift of their affection with we who live in poverty of spirit through the night and who daily yearn for beauty and devotion. Your most affectionate friend in poetry, Bob. Thank you. Thank you. And I have one poem now. I would like to dedicate to somebody I dearly love. He's probably one of the best loved people in Dalhousie, and certainly one of the craziest. And that's my brother Pete. And he really likes this poem, so I'm going to send this out to you, Pete. I call it The Uncollected Dawn. There can be no refund for the uncollected dawn, no second chance to sail upon a tide that's come and gone. The sister's fate will cackle at the dreams that slipped away and see your tears as wages for a debt you can't repay. And should you wait upon the shore, bereft in endless rue, your dream upon the tide forgone will not return to you. For yesterday is ruthless, her name is penned in stone. She will not be corrected, though you tear your flesh from bone. Her verdict is beyond reproach, no convict may appeal. Her prison is the truth, and the truth she speaks, her seal. So will you serve your sentence as a boy or as a man, and look towards the east, and let the western sky be damned? The days will pass more quickly, and you will not be alone if you set another's happiness 1 mile beyond your own. Forget regrets collected on your lonely prison shelf, and show the morning love that is not focused on yourself. For if yesterday was written by a foolish cocksure man, tomorrow will be written with the pen that's in your hand. Thank you. And I guess I have time for one more. And before I read it, I would like to say a big thank you to Bill and the museum. Really appreciate you guys having me. It's been great to come home and be able to do this. I would like to thank Mike, who is a fantastic muskrat trapper and not a half-bad photographer. And I would also like to thank my friend Tim Jakes, who over the years has given me a lot of feedback on my poetry, which I've appreciated very much. He's really been a great help with my writing. And of course, I want to thank all of you for coming out. It's great to see old friends and have family here and be able to do this in this historic old building. A couple of years ago, I had the thought that, what if I died in my sleep? What if morning came and I wasn't there? What's the message that I would like to leave? Because I've had a wonderful life, and if that were to happen, there is a message that I would very much like to leave. And I call this "Where Pilots Often Strand." And the pilots that I'm talking about are pilot whales. Where I live in PEI, every now and then, for whatever reasons, the pilots just hurl themselves up on the beach, and they perish there. So thank you very much again. I appreciate it very much. I do have some old LPs, my old record from 1985. I still have a couple of boxes. And I have some download cards for my 2 audiobooks. The way it works is if you buy the card, there's a code on the back. And you go to the website, you enter the code, and the MP3s download. So thank you again, and we're pilots often strand. If you should wake, and I should not, when dawn is leaking light, to sink that ocean liner, the rolling, pitching night, then I have left this message where the pilots often strand, words below the high tide mark written in the sand. First tell the sailing swallow that I have gone away, for she pulled me from my dreams each rough and ragged day. She painted all the heavens like tinsel in the sky, with grace that made my heart race. I will hate to say goodbye. Then go and tell the ocean, that great salacious sea, for I rode upon her back when I was wild and free. Her beauty was an anchor for a freely drifting fool, my prodigal repentance, that great baptismal pool. And will you tell the mountains that race towards the sky, for I rode their brooding shoulders when I was young and high. And though I had to leave them when November's winds were cold, yet still their highest peaks lay a claim upon my soul. Then break it to the lilac, and careful what you say, for we were childhood sweethearts, and sweethearts to this day. I still recall the tiny drop of nectar on my tongue, the sweetness of her kiss when I was pure and young. And go and tell the open road that waits for my return, the pavement that is cool now, but still it yearns to burn. For she was my companion, and ever was she nigh, and the 3 of us enraptured, the land, the sky, and I. And will you give my lovers the tidings on that day, though they have long been scattered? One last word I do pray, that my memories were sweetened with every passing year, and if I was unkind, I have paid with many tears. And go and tell the kids that run the meadow ragged, that taunt the morning's raptor from that hillside steep and jagged, that their kicking in the pasture and their carefree ambling way has kept an old heart young as he watched the morning's play. And last of all, your final call, the cosmos' favorite ruin, that angel and that devil, the drunken, restless moon. For we have laughed so many times, and many times we cried, and we have burned the midnight oil when those we love have died. So go and tell them all upon that fateful day that my final words were thank you for the debts I'll ne'er repay. For I have been a debtor from the day that I arrived, to the beauty, love, and wonder that kept my soul alive. Tell them I was happy beneath the aching sky, where that miracle did find me, the newborn's joyful cry. That I raced to each new mountain that seemed so out of reach, and upon the dawn I saw the great white sperm whale make his breach. That I loved the desert sun and the blooming cactus rose, and I walked the Athabasca when that mountain highway froze. That the northern lights did beckon with their winter rainbow run, that I stood in brilliant daylight beneath the midnight sun. That I saw the great cathedrals where the word of God is steep, that the city's moonlit skylines were known to make me weep. That I loved to haunt the mornings, each bright, exquisite dawn, that the moon never tired of me, and oh, how we got on. That I loved and I was loved, no matter where I ran, a grateful beneficiary of the brotherhood of man. So if you should wake and I should not, when dawn is leaking light, don't weep for me, I pray thee, for I will be all right. And if you ever loved me while I ran my mortal race, one more love I ask you for the man who'll take my place. Thank you very much.